In this video, I'm going to talk about the 6 reasons why I loathe to do pitch deck reviews and what to do about them. And forewarning, this video is going to go into possibly sensitive territory for some of you founders out there. So I'm putting the list right there up front so you can take a look at it and decide whether you want to continue watching the video or not. If you've hung around my channel long enough, you know I do a lot of pitch deck reviews. And there's a reason why I do the pitch deck reviews, which we're going to get into in just a moment. But there are also reasons why I don't like doing pitch deck reviews, and I'll be brutally honest with you. There have been times I've thought about just stopping doing them altogether. Why do them? But in an attempt to be vulnerable and transparent with all of you out there so that we continue to make a better connection here in this channel and in this community, I want to share the 6 reasons why I loathe them and what I'm doing about them and what you can do about them. Before we continue, my name is Ed Kang. If we met before, nice to see you. Thanks for stopping by. Use the chapter markers as usual to skip to the right parts of the video. If we haven't met before, I am a 7-time funded founder with 2 exits, and that's just a fancy way of saying I failed a bunch of times to your benefit, because I use YouTube videos like this and my channel to try and help early stage founders, especially those of you raising early stage capital, avoid some of the catastrophic mistakes that I've made. It's not to say you're not going to make mistakes, but I'm going to try to make your life a little bit easier because it's hard enough as it is. I'm also the Chief Strategy Officer for Startups.com, where we help hundreds of founders, and I work with a team that has raised over $750 million for startups that have gone on to raise billions. I myself have raised over $100 million from my startups, other people's startups, as well as startups funds. So we know a few things about pitch decks because we're watching what investors say to our founders and their pitch decks all day long. If you're already part of startups.com, thank you so much for your support. If not, go to the website and see what free resources are there available to you. Now let's jump into the 6 reasons why I loathe doing pitch deck reviews and what to do about them. First off, let's look at the definition of loathe, which is to feel an intense dislike or disgust for. Now you might be thinking, wow, Ed, that's a pretty strong word. And yes, it's just sort of below hate. And I don't hate doing pitch deck reviews. And generally, I don't loathe doing pitch deck reviews, but there are the 6 reasons why I could get into that emotional state. The next question you might be asking is then why do pitch deck reviews in the first place? And that's a really great question and a great place to start. If you notice, investors and a lot of experienced founders don't like to do pitch deck reviews, especially publicly like I do them. And there's a reason why. There are so many pitch decks out there, and there's so many founders that start off with a pitch deck, and they're all over the map in terms of quality. After having an idea, doing a pitch deck is one of the lowest barrier of entries to get into startups, and it's definitely lower than doing your first product, your MVP. But it's a slippery slope. Once you start doing pitch deck reviews, especially for early stage founders, there tends to be a large stream that starts to come your way because everybody wants help, and that's why I do it, because it's one of the best forms of feedback that you will get at the early stages of your startup. If you don't know how to articulate your idea, specifically problem, solution, and the market size, then the chances of you going on and being a successful founder are greatly diminished. It's also one of the most important exercises you can do if you are building a product. And that's why I say you should build a pitch deck and start talking to investors, maybe not necessarily raising money from day one, right from the inception of idea, but especially as you're building and you're getting feedback from customers, you want to talk to investors ahead of time if you plan on raising any amount of meaningful capital. Therefore, to contribute value to the startup ecosystem overall, because I love startups and I love founders. I've done 7 startups. I'm a founder. Of course, I want to be a founder helping other founders. There's no way that I'm going to stop doing pitch deck reviews. Don't worry. But I'm also entitled to my emotions. So let's look at the 6 reasons why I might feel a sense of loathing doing pitch deck reviews. The first one is ego. And after advising over 600, maybe 700 founders, I have experienced my share of egotistical founders. Not to say any of you out there are these ones, but I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt, founders come in with all different layers of ego. They start from being insecure, which we'll talk about in a moment, all the way to having the biggest ego that I'm surprised they fit through any door. Their heads even fit on the Zoom screen. The Dunning-Kruger effect is when someone knows a little bit about a topic and starts to think they're an expert. The opposite is also true. When someone knows a lot about a topic, they tend to think less of themselves and their expertise. Beyond a shadow of a doubt, after all my startup experiences, and the more I talk to founders every single day, and the more I watch other founders being funded, or I talk to venture capitalists or investors, the less I think I know about startups. In the beginning, when I had a little bit of knowledge, I thought I was the greatest advisor in the world. Now, to be fair, I had more knowledge than just the average person, but I thought I was the expert. All my advice was amazing. Now I flat out say, yes, 50% of my advice is amazing. I just don't know which 50% because I learn more and more, especially in startups that are changing week over week. everything is accelerating at such an amazing pace that we can't help but unlearn and continue to relearn, upskill, reskill, and every day is a school day when it comes to startups. But when I meet a founder that thinks they know absolutely everything about fundraising, everything about startups, and they are absolutely convinced that they are the experts in this, I wonder why they're even talking to me in the first place. And an egotistical founder typically leads to having a poor pitch deck review. So you want to humble yourself. You want to say, there are things that I'm sure I don't know. I'm going to stumble across them, and we're going to do it together and avoid this sense of loathing. Next up is intellectual dishonesty and deception, where the Dunning-Kruger effect is a cognitive bias, something that often you can't help. It's just sort of built in, ingrained into you. There are founders that go out there and they are on purpose intellectually dishonest with themselves and with other people. This involves ignoring the truth. And there are some immutable truths when it comes to fundraising. There are stats and statistics. They're not just stories, but there is quantitative evidence out there that will prevent your pitch deck from getting funded. But founders can take a step further and become intellectually deceptive. They can purposely leave stuff out of their pitch deck or fudge the numbers or embellish or flat out lie. And that creates one of the most difficult scenarios to actually do a pitch deck review that is workable or even productive for everybody involved. When you ignore the truth and you lie to yourself as a founder, you only hurt yourself. But if you actually deceive and you not only ignore the truth, but you twist the truth or you hide the truth, then you hurt other people. And ultimately that comes down to your character. And if your character does not have the proper foundation, you will not be able to lead your startup, especially if you want to build a unicorn. Because not only do you have to manage your startup, but you have to be a leader and you have to have the characteristics that can influence hundreds of people to get to $100 million of revenue. Furthermore, you might ignore the data and the evidence of what your users are saying and they're doing, and that's going to prevent you from growing to begin with. So after you set your ego aside to avoid the Dunning-Kruger effect, you are going to be completely honest and you're going to be open to the truth. That's so incredibly important to understand that truth exists out there, and your opinion aside, you can't ignore it or twist it out of context so you can get what you're doing, typically in a self-serving fashion. Next up is a sense of entitlement. There's something that happens to some founders out there that after they build a startup, they develop this entitlement believing that they deserve funding. This leads to feeling upset when they aren't funded. The reality is funding is never guaranteed. Nobody ever deserves funding just because they showed up. It's like winning a participation badge at some sort of race. It doesn't lead to good outcomes. It's a false signal, and it's very important that founders understand that their entitlement needs to be checked at the door, especially when dealing with investors. But this sense of entitlement can go further even after a pitch deck is created. Some founders start to think that just because they create a pitch deck and just because it got into the hands of the investor, that the investor needs to sit down and spend 30 minutes poring over it, finding everything they need to know and contacting the founder. That just doesn't happen. If you look at investors and how many pitch decks that they need to review on a regular basis, such as VC, then you're going to realize that they have a very little amount of time and you are not entitled to all that time. It even happens to me. You're probably not surprised that the number of pitch decks that get sent to me is much larger than the number of pitch decks I actually review. Some founders just don't know how to read a room. They send me a pitch deck and they acknowledge that I could be extremely busy and they expect me to give them all the advice. They hit me with 30 direct messages, and genuinely I do want to help, so I try to spend a little bit of time, but sometimes that's impossible. You are never entitled to have your full pitch deck reviewed by me or any investor. The only way is to earn it, and the best way to do that is to make the best pitch deck possible so you can get past those initial biases or the way that we filter the pitch decks. Improve your pitch deck to the best of the ability and accept the fact that you do not deserve to have your pitch deck viewed just because you showed up, just because you did it and you submitted it. Then when you do get feedback, you'll be able to improve even further. And as you work on your startup, you'll learn the skills to make sure you catch investors' attention with your pitch decks. The next one is sort of a root for all the previous three, and that's to have thin skin or to be insecure. I always tell founders, have a soft heart and thick skin. A soft heart to be sensitive, a soft heart to learn, to be open and humble, but have a thick skin because it is an absolute rough game out there. But I get it. Nobody wants to have their pitch deck rejected because it reflects upon the startup or at least you think it does. The reality is, most of the time, the internal reality of a startup is much better than the external perception because founders aren't born with this skill to put out amazing pitch decks. Just like anything in startups, pitch decks are a skill that you can learn and that you can get good at. I've literally done hundreds of pitch decks and pitched hundreds of investors, and I've been rejected most of the time, probably about 99% of the time. And through that all, I've developed the thick skin to accept that when an investor says no, it's a no. But why they rejected me, well, that's not necessarily straightforward as I might start to think. If I take it at face value, that's when the insecurities start to bubble up. Every founder needs a rock-solid foundation built on self-awareness, their core values, and their beliefs. They need to have that understanding that I've got an internal locus of control, that I am in control and I can affect the outcomes. They also call it a growth mindset of the things that I can do. I cannot control the things outside my sphere of influence or control. That would be my sphere of concern. And if I continue to stay out there and worry about what everybody else thinks, I will develop an addiction to people's opinions and I will not become a successful founder, because every time that you step out there, whether it's competition or people are just going to be jealous of you, haters, trolls, people that want to tear you down, or other people who are insecure and just want to experience misery and have company with everybody else, they are going to take shots at you. And that's why you have to have a soft heart and a thick skin. The soft heart will lead you to empathy, not just for other founders or investors, but customers as well. And a thick skin will make sure that you can keep taking a beating and get up every single time. That will be how you become resilient. It also means you need a little bit of swagger. You need that confidence, not arrogance, but confidence when pitching your startup. And the more preparation you put in knowing your numbers, understanding the ins and outs, having competitive analysis ready, the better you'll be at pitching. You'll be confident. That's what investors look for because they're expecting you to lead in the future. I said it before, I'm going to say it again. If you want to build a unicorn, you're going to have anywhere from 300 to 3,000 staff to get to that $100 million in revenue. And you can't be shrinking. You can't diminish yourself. You can't hide. You can't stick your head in the sand to be that type of founder. One of the expressions that I use is that I have the unfortunate job of telling people their babies are ugly. Some parents think that their babies are just so cute that they're on their way to stardom. They're going to be like little baby models. But it's not always the case. Sometimes your baby is ugly for now. There are many babies that grow up and they become very attractive, beautiful people. It's just like with startups. You might start ugly, but eventually, if you keep working at it, your startup is going to be magnificent. It's going to be that glorious unicorn that you've always dreamed about. But it takes so much work to get there. And while you're on that path, you're going to have your pitch decks picked apart. You're going to get brutal feedback, and that's just going to make you a better founder. Number 5 is making it personal. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I want to put it out there because I am human. When you cut me, I bleed just like everybody else. And unfortunately, there are founders out there that make things personal when I give them critical feedback on their pitch deck. They don't just get insecure about their pitch deck or their startup, they personally attack me. And I've had founders say some really horribly mean things publicly about me that just aren't true. Thankfully, I have an amazing community of people who are so supportive because I feel insecure at times and I can take a beating, and they come around and they support me and they say, Ed, that accusation is patently false. But not only have founders made it personal about me, they've gone on to make it personal about investors or venture capital as a whole. They keep ripping apart all the investors, all the venture capitalists, and they start to get really bitter. And if you ever think that you can take that attitude by tearing everybody else down and making things personal and get funded, well, you should be considering another career. In this world of social media, there's always going to be levels of toxicity. There's just something about being anonymous, sitting behind your keyboard, that allows anybody to say any mean thing that they want. Startups are an amazing meritocracy. If you do well, I promise you, you will get funded in some form or fashion. Ignore what everybody else says about, oh yeah, you can only get funded if you do this. You got the external connections. You have an Ivy League degree. Don't listen to the noise out there. Watch for the signals of people who are not insecure, who don't make things personal, who go out there and they work hard and they get what they deserve. Finally, it's voluntary ignorance. This is a cousin to intellectual dishonesty, but it involves putting your head in the sand and not doing what it takes to go out and learn. I appreciate founders that ask questions, especially if you ask good questions. But if you're asking questions out of ignorance, that you have not gone out yourself to try and get the answer and research before you come to ask the question, then the blame is on you if you're not getting the advice or you're not getting the pitch deck feedback that you want. And I get it. Sometimes it's just easier to ask the expert for advice, to give you the answer. But this involves undertaking the voluntary hardship of going out and trying to research the information and then bringing that to the table so you can have a productive conversation with the expert, that they don't have to go through all the basics. And that's why I ask all of you out there, before bringing me your pitch deck and asking for a review, watch my videos and try to make the pitch deck as best as possible so I can spend time giving you detailed, customized, actionable advice that's going to be productive for you versus going through all the basics that you could have just looked up online. Now, let me give you a real cool hack that you can use to go out and gather the information that you need to set yourself up for the best chances to get funded, especially if you're looking for venture capital. If you go to startups.com and you go to funding and you click on investor matching, there's a tool that you can use completely for free. We use this internally for investor relations, and those founders that are trying to raise on startups.com, they use it as well. But like I said, it's totally free. What you can do is you can scroll to the bottom of investor matching and you can upload your own pitch deck. Or you can type in all the information, but just upload your pitch deck. What will happen, and I'm going to show you right now, I uploaded one of the pitch decks of one of the startups that I'm working with. It will analyze your pitch deck and it will start to match you with investors. You may not be ready to raise funding just yet, but I want to show you how you avoid this voluntary ignorance. You can start to gain that information. You can start to hack that understanding, get that intelligence going to make sure that you're prepared to pitch them when you are ready. You see, it's already done. I've been matched with 1,518 investors. I'm going to see my match. And here we go. This individual is an angel, and I matched 100% with them. I'm not going to go into the type of startup. You can see all the information in the left hand of your screen, but I keep going down, and here's another firm. It's a venture capital firm that I matched 76% with. But first, I can go take a look and see why I matched with this individual. And the AI here will tell you. Then you can go in and look them up. So I've got contact information for this individual that I can show the info. You do have to pay, but you can look them up on LinkedIn just by the name and the description. Then I can start to understand their investment history and start to gather information of where I need to be ready to pitch this individual. Now let's look at this venture capital firm. I can see all the areas in which they're invested, and I can learn more information about them. Furthermore, I can go and find out who the partners are, the contacts, and look them up on LinkedIn, or you can look them up right here. I can look at their website, and I can go to Crunchbase. On Crunchbase, I can see all the activity for Revel Partners. But specifically, I'm going to go down all the way to the bottom, and I'm going to take a look at what type of investments that they've made. Now, here's something interesting. The latest investment they made was April 29th, 2024. If they haven't done a deal in the last year, then they probably don't have any dry powder left to invest in you. But we can also do some more research on what it would require to get investment from a similar type of investor. For example, $750,000 was invested in Sundogs in a pre-seed round. I'm always curious about pre-seed rounds because I work with a lot of pre-seed founders. So I'm going to click on Sundogs and I'm going to understand more about their company, and I start to research, and you will learn what it takes to get $750,000 investment, generally speaking, from a venture capitalist. Furthermore, you can see who the lead investors are. You can start to click on even the angels that participated, and you can start building your own database of investors who invested in similar types of rounds in similar types of startups to yours. This is all available for free on startups.com under Investor Match. You've got nothing to lose by uploading your pitch deck and coming to learn what it will take to raise angel capital, venture capital, or any other type of investment for your company, and how it's going to make sense for you, how to optimize your chances. And who knows, if you really like the tools, maybe you'll join us at startups.com and let me be your advisor and help you raise capital. Next, I want you to watch a video that I'm putting on the screen about how I rank the ways that I go and find investors. That's probably going to be very helpful for you, especially after you do an amazing pitch deck, you get all the feedback, and you start to learn with us together, and you build your startup to the place where you are ready for that round of funding. Thanks for hanging out with me in this video. I'll see you in the next one.